Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Today we're going to explore the interesting and exciting world, at least I think it's exciting, of common law. Now you may have heard me talking about it on the channel in my monologues and things, and of course you would have seen various different guests over the last 12 months, I suppose, talking about different aspects of it. Well, I'm very thrilled that I've discovered that there are lots of groups practicing all of this, and we're going to find out from the Hereford Common Law Group what they do, how they got together and how it's all formed, and what they can do to help the situation that we're in with this corporate Britain, with this tyrannical government shoving down what they think is corporate governance to us, the people of this land. So it's my great pleasure to bring to you Amanda and Herman from the Hereford Common Law Group. Hello, guys.
Hi.
And girls. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's very nice to have you on the channel, and I love Hereford. I was up there just the other day in the pouring rain, because we've had a lot of rain across the country, but the countryside is so beautiful in your neck of the woods. So
It is
I
beautiful.
just you're almost forgotten out there,
Mm.
I'm guessing you rather enjoy.
Yes, we do enjoy that. It gives us a kind of a privileged situation where we kind of can work on the fringe of things, which is quite nice.
Absolutely. So let me turn to you first of all, Amanda, because I think you are going to tell us a little bit about the actual group, the common law group, how you got going, and the sort of things that you do.
Okay. Well, we started around about 3 years ago. There were just a group of us around a kitchen table that established it. We moved on to premises because our group actually grew. And we have roughly around about 400 members now.
Wow.
Not all 400 are active, but a lot are. But yeah,
And what do you mean by active? What would you say? I mean, you've got 400 members, so
yeah. So we've got quite a lot of people actually who, for instance, are we go out boarding, yellow boarding. We do that once a fortnight now. Um, there are obviously things that we've taken on board. Um,
I'm just putting up on the screen actually a yellow board event. You sent me this for the 18th.
yeah. Yeah, that's obviously coming up very, very shortly. So, and that seems to be growing. What we've discovered from the yellow boarding, because we did this several years ago, and it didn't get the response as quickly as we thought it would. But we've sort of introduced this, and we've been really, really surprised now at the response from the public. The public are actually coming up to us. Before, we used to get lots of shouts and XYZ from the public, but now
Yes.
the response is amazing. And we've just been actively doing this again for the last couple of weeks.
In the
So
rain.
why do you think the response has changed?
People are waking up.
Right.
People are waking up to everything that's being bestowed upon us, really. And obviously, we hand out various leaflets. We hand out the light paper. And people are actually asking us for the information now, which is we're looking at probably taking this maybe a little step further. In what degree, we're not quite sure, because at the moment we do it once a fortnight, and the level of people that are coming to those, we don't like to call it a demonstration. We like to call it a peaceful awareness,
Brilliant.
the public, because we are peaceful.
Yes.
And yeah, but we have to look at how we're going to move forward with that to make it a little bit more prominent out there for the public. So, but yeah, so basically, Herefordshire Common Law, they started 3 years ago, as I said, by a small group of people, and it's just expanded. Obviously, we've got some very, very good characters within this group, and obviously Herman for one. Without Herman, I think a lot of us probably would have fallen by the wayside.
So, yeah, so can you tell us then what is common law? We've had a lot of people on the channel talking about various versions of law: natural law, God's law, common law, obviously legislation and things like that. So it's nice to just to sort of put on the table what your definition is.
Well, I think Herman can explain it probably far better. I'm very much an administrator and I organise things, but you know, Herman can give you all the details with reference.
Fantastic,
What
Herman. What's common law?
It's simple. It's common sense.
it is. Yeah.
It really is as simple as that. And the funny thing about it is, in our common law group, because we have one of the most advanced council tax challenges in the country, we have probably about 40 people who are now resisting paying council tax on the basis of a conditional acceptance. We've accepted that we might be liable to pay council tax, but we'd like you to prove it. And we are now into our second year. We have about 40 people. Originally, we were just 9 last year. We've expanded to 40 people. Now we are turning the tables on the council because we are taking the battle to them. And it's going to be interesting. That's going to be coming up over the next couple of weeks. We've taken certain actions that will pin the council to the wall, and then we're going to move this to a high court action. I can't tell you too much about it at the moment because we don't want to. We'd like to surprise the council.
Yeah,
Yes.
But essentially, they are going to be nailed on their own rules, their own laws, their own legislation. Because for the last 2 years, we've now been asking, very politely asking the council to justify their position in paying and collecting council tax. They've been unable to do so. And all they have managed to do is to basically stonewall us, take members to court, and refuse them any of their rights in law. So if you're thinking about having a fair trial in council tax, you forget that for a start. But what we have been doing, and we did this from the very, very first contact we made with the council, we set traps. We set trap after trap after trap. And my technique, because this is what I used to use when I was in commercial world before I retired, you allow your opponent to make all the mistakes, to use the hubris, which they inevitably have, to bury themselves.
Yeah.
So I basically describe it as handing them a spoon, handing them a ladle, handing them a shovel, and then at the moment, they're wondering how the hell they're going to get out of this hole that they dug with an earth mover. Now they're in a situation where we are actually now taking control of the whole process, and by doing so, we are leaving them no options at all. There was one particular gentleman from the council who I've had sort of cross swords with many times in court, and basically I'm kind of promising to send him to prison. I'm making that a life's work to send him to prison because he knows what he's doing.
Right.
I've had conversations with the chief enforcement officers of other councils, and one of them basically she told me that, well, I'm not sure that I'm doing the right thing, but I've been doing this the same way for the last 20 years, and I'm not going to change what I'm doing. And I'm saying, well, you have to, because I'm telling you what the law is now. You could have actually pretended that you were ignorant before, but now you're not. And the other thing about it is the person who I was referring to hasn't received any more chasing calls from the bailiffs or any more letters from the council on the fact that she has now got a conditional acceptance to pay council tax. That's the only way that they could, for instance, put you in prison, because what they will do is, because it's a civil debt and we don't have workhouses anymore, the whole process is that they will trap you into basically contempt of court. So they will say you're obliged to pay council tax and you are refusing to pay council tax. Therefore, you are breaking the diktat of the court order, and therefore, if you don't pay it within 7 days, we're going to jail you for contempt of court. They can't jail you for a debt. So
Right.
Once
So
that,
what would be the court term? Sorry, the imprisonment term that they would. What would be the maximum that they could actually threaten you with?
I think it's 28
It is
days.
28
And
days.
that's the same term that you get for contempt of court. But the thing
Right.
about it is that if you actually are worried about that, and you say, well, okay, well, send me to prison, they have to write off the debt,
Yes.
which of course, it kind of,
Well, of course. I mean, and so if you've got, say, I don't know, 1,000 people in your same town saying, "Send me to prison," then for a month,
precisely.
then that's a lot of money that they've suddenly. And not only that, they've got to feed you, heat you, house you.
And the debt is really great. But we're turning things around now, because we are taking the battle to them. We are saying, we have been asking you these very simple questions for the last 2 years, and you have been unwilling to even engage with us. Doesn't matter that you actually have a duty of transparency under your own operating procedures. You have not engaged with us, and what you're doing is illegal. So either you actually come clean and say, yes, what we're doing is illegal, or you justify what you're doing and saying it is legal. These are the rules and regulations. And one of the things that we've done, I think maybe exceptionally, is that we have never engaged with the council using common law. It's one of those things, you go to court and they now say, oh, free man on the land, and therefore we're not going to talk to them. They basically deride you as a result from that. We don't do that. We engage them in their own rules, their own regulations, and
Right.
have nothing that they can do. All they can basically do is to obfuscate, or they will basically, again, they'll use violence and threats of jailing for contempt of court if you're trying to speak up for yourself. They will not allow you to speak unless you are willing to go into court, and this is with your monopoly hat,
Yes.
and you become your legal fiction. Of course, as soon as you stepped over the bar into the court and you've declared yourself as the legal fiction, well, you've already broken the law. You've committed perjury. You've actually said, I am something I'm not. Therefore, the court can do anything it likes to you.
Yes.
And they can consider themselves to be merciful. Well, I could have sent you to prison for 3 months for contempt of court, but I'm not. I'm just going to fine you.
How
So,
grateful you must be.
well, precisely, But we had on the 26th of September, we had 15 people up in front of the court in Kidderminster, in front of a completely corrupt judge, and that corrupt judge jailed me last year for contempt of court, had me arrested by the court security, who don't have powers of arrest. The problem for him was that I appealed it to the Crown Court, and I won my appeal. It was completely quashed.
Oh, right. So you didn't actually have to do the time.
No, I didn't have to do any time. But I mean, he decided that he would very gratefully he'd reduce it to a £200 fine, and he basically conducted his own star chamber,
Which
and of
you've
course,
never paid.
which I never paid. No.
No. No.
Well, I mean,
Let me just ask you this, because people often say, this idea of not paying the council tax is all very well, but surely you should be contributing to your town. You're in there, you're using the bins, you're using the lights, blah 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 blah. We know all of that, but what would you say to that? Just playing the devil's advocate for a moment.
okay. Well, everyone believes that their council tax is paid to the council, and the council uses
Yes.
that money to fund local services, and etc. etc. Well, it's rubbish.
Mm.
Every single penny that you paid is paid into a consolidated fund. What the council do every year is they come up with a budget, and that budget has to include things that the government say you have to have. So the government says, oh, well, we want more surveillance cameras, we want more ANPR cameras to monitor traffic, we want more facial recognition cameras. You've got to factor that into whatever you're going to be doing, because there are going to be separate budget allocations for those.
Yes.
If you were an autonomous council collecting your own money, you could determine where that money is spent, but you can't. So although there may be a couple million left in the pot to put up surveillance cameras in town, or ANPR cameras, you can't spend that money on repairing the roads, although the roads, as you probably experienced in Herefordshire, are not in the best of condition. So,
Lots of puddles, I noticed,
yeah,
as I was weaving around.
very deep puddles. Yeah. So
Yes.
the whole process is that the local governance has been taken over by central government.
Yes.
Everything is now centralized. Everything goes to the consolidated fund, from which they take all the pension funds for the employees of the council. So approximately, I believe it's 52% of what you pay in council tax goes to the City of London, to the pension companies. They are, if you like, the insurance companies. So that's disappeared altogether. Then there's historical debt. And I believe that's about 18% of the money that you pay goes in paying off historical debt, borrowing that they've made from the City of London banks, and which they're taking their interest on. So only 30% of the money that you pay in council tax comes back to be used locally. And then when it comes back to be used locally, it is dictated exactly how it's going to be spent.
Right.
So, you have no local governance whatsoever. We're quite lucky in so much as in Herefordshire we have a council that has been basically hung for years now, more than a decade, I think.
Yeah.
No one has overall control. I think the Conservatives have now taken minority control of the council, but they can always be outvoted. So that we are well behind the mechanisms of the low traffic neighbourhoods and all of the other schemes, but they're now trying desperately to bring them in. We had a meeting with a group that is trying to encourage 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. Well, we're not having that here.
Absolutely.
And when we took them to task, they had no answers. I mean, it was obvious that the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits are being brought in to allow autonomous vehicles. It's nothing to do with anything that we are that's going to benefit us. And
Yes.
as I was sort of puzzling over, thinking, well, anything that happens to be made a law has to be beneficial to the people that it's being made for. Well, none of this is happening is beneficial to us at all. It's all benefiting the few people who want this strange control agenda, which comes from Switzerland. It doesn't come from anywhere.
No.
And as far as I know, when I was living in Switzerland, I was a foreigner. Therefore, I assume I'm probably the Swiss people are a foreigner as well. So we're being governed by a foreign state. And
So just to go back to the consolidated fund, you're not told that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But when the bill arrives and you get all the gumph that comes with it that tells you they're spending this on the police and this on the bin removal, and they don't actually mention in the document that your money is going straight to the government and the government come back with a budget of these are the things that we've told you that you have to have. Am I correct in saying that?
correct. What they always say is that little sort of marketing weasel phrases. Oh, the money is collected for use and to be spent locally. And of course it is.
Yes.
But
And if you approach the council and say, hang on a minute, this isn't the money that we've put into the pot. This is money that's gone to the government, and you've got the budget. What do they reply to that?
oh, they say, oh no, it's all used for local, because I mean it's either used for paying pensions of councillors, or it's used for paying the interest. But they
Right.
don't mention that it all goes into the consolidated fund, and
No.
that only happened from 1993. Because 1992 we had the Local Government Finance Act, which then changed what used to be called rates
Yes.
or community charge. It converted it into a tax, and all taxes in the UK are paid into a consolidated fund. We don't have any choices. So basically speaking, in 1993, the central government took control of all of local spending. Up until then, money could be collected and used locally, and determination for how that was used was also determined locally. No longer. Now we have the green agenda, we have Agenda 2030, which we're all working towards. And therefore the setting up of 15-minute prisons and things like that, the cutting down of your ability to travel or fly or go abroad or anything of that. So it's an odd situation, but it's becoming blatantly obvious that the agenda is not going to be working in our benefit.
No.
And
I mean, the reason I was pushing the fact that the money goes to the consolidated fund is this is something that doesn't get spoken about a lot. And we hear a lot of people saying, I'm not paying my council tax and I'm fighting the council. And I feel that there is, from perhaps people who are not awake and who find that a little bit rebellious, if you like, go, oh, I don't know why you would want to do that. We need the roads, we need the bins, we need the lights, the lights, the police, and so on, and certainly don't need the lice or the rats or anything. And so in a way, getting that message over is quite important, so that they understand the money isn't collected locally. Because if it was, I think people might then be a little bit more, they would go, okay, the money is actually of some use if you had the chance to, if it was a fair system, of course.
indeed, yes.
But the fact that it is this system that is causing so much pain, particularly when we're in the hardships that we're in, which is pretty much government made up anyway, that I'm sure we could sort it all out if we didn't have a government.
Well, I agree with you totally on that one. I mean, what we're being asked to do now is to say that the government has created all this chaos. We are now telling them, "Oh, you've got to provide the cure." I think
Yes.
it's not going to work very well for us, is it?
No, well, I think they've proved themselves time and time again as being completely incompetent and most likely under the thumb of people like the WEF and the WHO, as we've seen, selling our sovereignty. So one of the things you mentioned just before we started to record is that the Common Law Group is trying to put forward alternatives to the local government. I don't know where that pinging is. That you pinging, or it's not me pinging?
Yeah.
So don't worry about that, gentle listener. It isn't aliens landing. Not today. They might be here tomorrow. But tell me about some of the alternatives then to local governments and how common law is useful for that, because it seems to me that there probably are a lot of people who would like to set up similar groups and fight these same issues, because not many of us really, I can't think of anybody, to be fair, that I've met in the travelling around and in doing this who's put their hand up and said, I would like to have a 15-minute city, CBDCs, net zero, and the whole works. I can't find people who actually want that, which is very frustrating, seeing as that's what the government says is going to be coming down the pipe. So what alternatives have you got in mind?
Well, we've obviously been through the same kind of arguments and system here as well, because we're always in the situation where people are saying, well, I don't like this, I don't want this, and I don't think we should have this, but they're not coming up with any alternatives. So we went the other way around. We thought, well, okay, we'll come up with alternatives and basically just put them into the mix. And one of the alternatives that we've come up with, and we should have taken quite seriously, is we're calling this Assembly 400, by which you actually have 400 representatives of ordinary people throughout the entire county who make up, if you like, the governance of the county. At the moment, we have 53 unitary councillors, and then we have a whole bunch of parish councillors, etc. So altogether, they probably come to about 300, but we're looking at 400 people coming together from all walks of life. And we're not talking about people who want the job. We're talking about imposing this on people who we believe are capable of doing that job.
Because, like a jury in a criminal case.
Indeed, yeah, because you need the diversity. I mean, one of the things that we are having in this world is a unipolar world and a unitary authority for the whole world, telling everyone that they must live in exactly the same way.
Yes,
so that's crazy, because I mean, you could see from your visit to Hereford that every single county is different.
Yes.
But this one-fits-all policy, which they're trying to impose on everyone from the top down, is never going to satisfy anyone. So what we're thinking is what you need to do is introduce diversity. So you have a diversity of people who come together and bringing all of their various skills to the mix. Now, we all know, well, you should all know, that council tax is voluntary, because there's no way that they can prove anyway that there's an obligation to pay it. So we're not saying that nobody should pay, but there are a lot of people who can't afford to pay.
Right.
So what do? Well, they contribute time. they contribute their energy to the system, so they become involved with the running of the county, or they will put themselves forward to do certain jobs, but to give their time to that.
Yes.
We're a farming community here, largely in Herefordshire. So if we can actually place that into producing food and producing a local mechanism for being able to distribute and sell that food, all of these sorts of things, even if it's coming around to picking up litter, you're giving 3 hours of your week to checking out your local village and making sure that there's no litter or anything of that sort. But if you think in terms of Herefordshire has, I think, about 68,000 people there. So, but if you're thinking in terms of giving 3 hours a week, that's an enormous resource. Enormous resource. So, and that resource doesn't have to be paid for with money; it's paid for in energy.
And just on that, I mean, if you've got a fear-based society that people are struggling to find money to pay a bill and what have you, as opposed to, well, actually, I could get involved and paint the bridge, or whatever it is, help dig a ditch, or pick up the litter, or go onto the farm and put in those 3 hours, and then you start to see the difference in your town and village, the pride and the sense of belonging and being part of the community and meeting friends along the way is going to be so much more beneficial for everybody than people worrying about, I can't pay this, I'm going to end up in court. I mean, it just seems so obvious for a cohesive society.
It does.
But the idea of central control is not to build a cohesive society.
No.
The central control requires divisions to be built, because
Yes.
control through division. And you don't control anyone by uniting them into a common direction of any sort, especially one.
But that's the pretense they try to give, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So under those circumstances, the idea is to do away with voting completely on voting for personalities, voting for people to represent you or represent you in Parliament. You appoint people to do that, and if they don't do their job, they're out, and you appoint someone else to do it, so that you are in control as the public. You're in control. What you do vote for are policies.
Right.
So you vote for policy. So if you say, well, I want to bypass, or I don't want to bypass to run around my town, you vote for that. You don't vote for someone to go and represent you, because we have 2 MPs who represent Herefordshire in the House of Commons. Both of them are absolutely useless. Absolutely useless, but they always step forward with the good deeds that they've done for individuals when it comes around to election time.
Yes.
I mean, it is farcical. They do the minimum necessary to basically represent the county or represent the people within the county, but they do the maximum possible to represent the interests of these special interest groups like the WEF, the WHO, and imposing that on the local level. Because I've always said that if you can get control of your council, it doesn't matter what central government wants to do. It doesn't matter what the WEF wants to do, or the World Health Organization. Nothing it matters, because it has to be instigated at a local level. And
Yes.
no one at the local level who wants it, then it's a complete waste of their time. So we are wishing, we are wishing all of this sort of basically this dystopia upon ourselves by expecting a central government to do it all for us. We have to take back that control. I mean, the funny thing about it is the Brexit campaign, which was what, take back control. Well,
Yes.
we don't have any control at all now.
No.
We have a Conservative government, and then we have a Labour Party opposition, and they've converged their interests so that we have a uni-party. Everyone is converting, and we don't have any choice at all. We don't have any representation whatsoever. I mean, looking at the appalling turnout to Andrew Bridgen's debate the other day, and that was shocking, absolutely shocking. And there were so many people who wanted to know more, and they wanted that debate to be proper, and they wanted their MPs to turn up. None of them bothered, apart from 15 altogether.
Well, just to clarify that, I mean, in my show, I talked about it beforehand, and people were writing to their MP, their representative, and as you say, they don't represent, because many people wrote. Then they sent me the copies of the MP's letter back to me so I could see it, and they're all, I'm very busy with this and I'm very busy with that. It's safe and effective. Nothing to see here. We won't be listening. Some of them said that it was all conspiracy nonsense and they wouldn't be bothering to attend, which is unbelievable, because that's not their duty to make that decision. If their constituents are saying, we want you there in sufficient numbers, as was the case, and then they go, do you know what, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Well, you're not representing anybody, and that's where, as you said earlier, we should just get shot of these people.
Yeah, well, they represent themselves, or they represent the narrow interests of their party. And when you actually have two parties with the converging interests, you don't get any representation. But at the very least, or the very best you can ever hope to have, is just two opinions.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that doesn't represent anyone or anyone's desires to build a cohesive society. But that's not the purpose. The purpose of government is power, is control. So I describe it in talks I give with the Common Law Group that it's a parasitic relationship. And the government is operated by the Crown Corporation, and then people will assume that the Crown Corporation is the king. No, it's not. He's just a highly paid employee of the Crown Corporation. The Crown Corporation is a trust that operates from the City of London, and it basically controls everything. It controls government, and essentially we have no democracy whatsoever. We never do. We're just given the illusion that we have some control, because every now and again they'll give way on some small subject, but the whole process is moving inexorably forward, bit by bit by bit, and there's nothing that we feel that we could do to stop it. Well, there is, but enough of us have to stand up and just use that two-letter word: no.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Everything that is required by government needs our consent. But we have given that consent away. Well, and we believe in many instances that we don't have any power at all, because the power has been basically given to a corporation with our name on it. And therefore it has been subsumed to government, which is again another corporation. So all of these things we need. I mean, with the Brexit campaign and Dominic Cummings actually telling you take back control. Well, that's farcical.
It has been
absolutely farcical, because we've given it all away. But now we do. And then I think it's getting to a critical point here, where it's either going to be that we have an open society where we are going to get our freedoms back, or we're going to have a complete dystopia. And it's a matter that people have got to decide what they want. And I think there may be a kind of splitting away of various people in society, saying, well, if you want to go and live in your 15-minute cities and your low traffic neighborhoods and do whatever you want to do there, then that's fine. You go and do it. I'm not going to prevent you from doing it. I'm not going to do it.
I don't think people really want to live in a dystopian thing. I mean, I just think it's, from my perspective, having sort of done this show on this kind of subject for a year now, it's because people are so brainwashed into believing that's the only way. And when listening to you both, you're offering, as you said at the beginning, common sense that people have forgotten that they've got. That they can use common sense and ask themselves, hang on, is this right? I mean, one of the things I keep pushing is the fact that the policies the government keep bringing to us are pretty much anti-human.
Yes.
And if they're anti-human, why are we paying for people to provide us with anti-human policies?
Absolutely.
And if we could get the public to start to realise that's the thing, they have the power. We don't want this. Nobody wants it.
Yeah.
As I say, I can't find anybody who wants an anti-human policy other than those employed by the government. And How can we get more groups, more people talking the way that you're talking across the country, so that more towns start to and more people in those towns start to realise the power lies with them?
Indeed. Well, programs like this obviously are going to be putting the message out to a lot of people, and the main message that goes out is you're not actually alone.
Mm.
A lot of people feel, I mean, we obviously deal with a lot of people who live in Wales and quite disparate communities geographically. And many people feel, well, I'm just fighting this battle on my own. There's nothing I can do, and nothing I can do to battle against this behemoth, which is, which is going to be hammering me into submission every week. Um, but when they start to realize that, no, you're not actually alone. I've always described this whole campaign. Everyone's been expecting that with our advanced council tax campaign that something was going to break early. I said, it's never going to happen that way. This is going to be death by 1,000 cuts. And there are people all over the country doing their little bit. And eventually it is literally just chopping the thing down bit by bit by bit. I believe that we're hearing rumours from government that they're looking at alternatives to council tax. Well, that's showing that the whole campaign, one way or another, is working, because it's becoming more and more apparent as the price of council tax increases that it's going to be untenable to keep charging people. I mean, you pay 25 or 30% on your income tax, and then you pay taxes on everything you buy. You pay further taxes on your council tax. You pay death taxes the whole process is that you will eventually end up owning nothing. And it's becoming so obvious these days. People are, I think, and the reason we decided that we would concentrate and focus our common law group, and which is one of the reasons it's grown so quickly, we concentrated it on self-interest. Because we brought in the council tax thing, and the revelation that people have on the basis that they don't actually have to pay it, that it's actually voluntary,
Yes,
comes as a huge surprise. And then when you actually tell them these things, they won't believe you. But what we've actually been doing is we've been not paying, and there's nothing the council can do. Absolutely nothing the council can do, because they cannot prove that there's an obligation for us to pay it. And there are more and more of us. So, as I said, last year there were 9 of us. This year there are probably about 30 to 40 of us. Probably, I think, about 36 at the moment that I know of. That's within the group. Next year we are going to take that to hundreds.
You say, and it's interesting you say that, because I mentioned this on the show about a couple of weeks or so ago, that here we are with about 5 months to go before the comedy bill arrives on our doormats on April the 1st, and it's one of my ambitions is to try and give the confidence to people and the knowledge, which is one of the reasons it's great to have you on the show, that there are people doing this, and that if significant numbers do this from April, start to challenge, not saying we're not paying to our community, but we're withholding until you can show us the obligation and prove to us that we actually have to, because we may want to have the bins taken and the lights on and all of those things, but a fair system would be nice rather than this dreadful system. So, and as you say, until you can actually prove it, we'll just hold on to the money. Thanks very much.
Yes.
And then if we could get 50,000, 100,000 people across the land doing this all at the same time, and having enough groups that can build confidence when the council prints out on their council paper something called a summons, which is really only an invitation, all of this sort of rubbish, that they can then instantly ring up the court and say, oh, is there actually a case? Just bomb. Oh, I'm not allowed to say that in case what with the things going on in the world. Flood them with calls and things. You have to be very careful on YouTube what you say certain words in the algorithm.
As well, though.
I caught myself on that. But yes, have loads of people doing this all at once, because they just won't be able to cope. And the message will go up to the chain. So I'm very much behind a concerted effort for beginning of April next year, and building up these groups so that if we have more groups like what you're doing around the country, with the confidence to do this, I think we can really make a big difference.
Well, at the end of the day, the chief factor that's driving people paying council tax is fear.
Yes.
Once you dispose of that, they have absolutely no power over you whatsoever. So they go through the whole process of sending you the summons. It looks terribly, frightening, but saying you don't have to turn up in court. And is it, if you don't turn up in court, we will a judgment will be made against you as if you had. Well, that's telling you it doesn't matter whether you turn up or not. The judgment's going to be the same.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all in the English. They're telling you exactly what's going on. So you then get a liability order, but then you realize that the liability order doesn't exist because you asked the court. And we've had people, and this is part of the evidence we've collected. We have had people contact the court in writing and say, well, this is my case number, and I believe that you have a liability order, and you're expecting me to pay, £2,700 or what have you. And then the court enforcement department will say, well, we have nothing of we know nothing about you on our books, and it's not even one of our case numbers.
Yes. It's just generated by the council.
Well, indeed. Well, not only that, though. I mean, it's so blatant here in Herefordshire because in Herefordshire, if you don't pay a council tax for 2 years and you get summonses 2 years in a row, they have the same case number. And you go, that's a bit odd because all court numbers are unique. But
Yes.
it's not. What they're doing they're putting on the summons is your database reference number for your property on their database, and that is the summons number. So it's not even issued by the court; it's issued by the council. I mean, it's complete and utter farce. And then when you go to in front of the magistrates, then you see the collusion that's happening between the council and the court. Because what they did to me was I used to go in as an advocate. So they couldn't really touch me. I would go in there and I would say, I'm here by special appearance, so I can paddle in your sea, and I can't be drowning. And so what they said, oh, well, no, we'll have to withdraw his right of audience, which is what they did. But they did it as a private meeting between the council and the court before I was going to go in on. It was in June. So, I mean, there's collusion between it. The court is obliged to be a neutral arbiter. We have actually, one of our members in September motioned the court to answer 2 questions. And the court ignored it. And then they asked the council representative, one I'm making a sort of an ambition of putting in prison. They asked him to swear something on in the witness box on oath, which is the only part of the recorded proceedings. Everything else is not recorded, and he did. So he's quite happy to perjure himself every time. But when the court was instructed to motion the council to answer 2 questions, and the motion wasn't dismissed, the motion certainly wasn't dismissed by the judge. It wasn't even discussed, but they were motioned. One of the things that we did at the last hearing in Kidderminster is that we had 12 witnesses go into the back of the court in the land area. The 12 seats at the back, which represents the common law jury. And then before the cases were heard, we stood up and we read out the juror's oath. So we converted ourselves into a jury. Everyone had clipboards, pens, and were making notes. The judge was livid. I mean, he was absolutely livid. He was like, an angry schoolboy bully who, but a small one. And again, we're seeing this from judges. We're seeing this from the magistrates. The chief magistrate. They only have 3 of them. They have 2 wingmen and 1 person in the middle. The person in the middle is normally a solicitor, so they know what is what's going on here. They know the rules, and certainly the clerk of the court. They no longer call the clerk of the court; it's the court advisor or something now.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah, so that they're trying to abrogate their responsibility in law. But the last time that we had, well, I think it was August, the magistrate was calling us lunatics from from the back. I mean, she completely lost the plot. And
Yes.
we were quite casual about it, and we had to say, well, we've just sat down here and watched you commit £750,000 worth of fraud, and issuing something that doesn't exist in the form of a liability order against about 500 people. And you get, who's the lunatic?
Yes.
And they go storming out of court, and it's
Recruit themselves.
yeah, but they know the jigs up. They know the jigs
Yeah.
up, and
They
they really are in the situation. But we have their names. We've made a note of all of the judges we've met, who we've come across. We've made a note of all of the magistrates and the clerks, and we're going to hold them all to account.
Yes, quite right.
Prepared to take it to the top.
Well, this is the problem that council are having with this. The council will always be able to intimidate one person.
Yeah.
What they do, they threaten all sorts of things. They threaten the bailiffs, etc., etc. And then, if you want to challenge them, they will say, "Oh, do you own your own house?" And not say yes. They go, "Oh, well, this could be really expensive to take through the courts. I mean, do you want to risk £100,000 legal bill at the end of the day if you lose?" And everyone goes, "Well, well, I've got to pay £4,000 in council tax, and some council tax bills are that high. It's lunacy. I just paid the £4,000. I'm not going to risk losing my house and all the rest of it." But the problem they have with us is that we have stuck together as a group.
Yes.
Not one person, and we now have several hundred people who will do this next year, and we're doing it in quite a special way, which I suppose you would class in America as a class action. But this is what we are building up for here, and for the last 2 years, all we've been doing is collecting irrefutable evidence that the council is going to have to answer to in the High Court. And again, you have to avoid any of the administrative courts, and that is if you like, the magistrates' court, the county court, and even right up to the Crown Court. They're all administrative courts. They have the ability to make decisions based on opinion. They can make the law. You call it a de facto court. So they
Yes.
pick it up.
So they're private courts. They're not recorded. They're private.
Precisely.
For the private bar guild's own.
Well, this is the reason that I had my conviction for contempt of court quashed by the Crown Court. The Crown Court judge did not want this to go to the High Court, because it would have meant a judge would have been struck off and probably gone to prison, and a lot of other people would have been done for fraud, including HMCTS.
Yeah, so it's better to just squash yours,
Precisely,
and try and keep some sort of status quo, but that isn't going to happen.
Indeed.
It sounds.
So what we've been doing is collecting evidence, and we're going to go right above their heads. We're going to go straight to the High Court. In the High Court, they can only judge on the basis of law and case law. We know the council doesn't have anything to support them. The legislation falls apart the second that you start to read it and understand the words that they've used. For instance, in Herefordshire, we are not residents, because resident is a commercial term. We're not in dwellings, we live in homes. We're inhabitants of the county. So when you start using the right jargon and the right language, they realize that you know how the game is played.
Yes.
And you don't know what to do. So what they do is they just stonewall you. And they think, well, if we do nothing, then we're going to be okay. But we're now turning it the other way, where silence is going to be acquiescence, which is what they always use to us, called tacit contract or tacit agreement. So we're using exactly their same rules against them, which is why I'm saying that we do everything in their commercial jurisdiction. We just do it better, and we do it harder.
Yes.
If they want to know how ruthless we could be, well, I'll be finding out within the next few months.
Let's just quickly talk about community trusts. You mentioned that before we recorded. So people are obviously worried about their property and things like that, that things can be taken away.
Yeah.
I was hoping to have a lady talking about private trusts, but unfortunately, at the moment, she has a stalker. And she wants to deal with that before she can come publicly on the show. So I'm going to try and find somebody else who can talk about private trusts and setting them up and how you go about it. So tell me about your community trust.
Well, we're in the process of setting it up at the moment.
Right.
Because what we want to be able to do is to allow people to take themselves out of the public and put themselves in the private.
Yes.
Now we're in the learning phase of this at the moment, and we're going to use a guy from Wales who has done this. He did his trust in 2011, so he's very experienced. He knows all about it. But essentially, we're going to be creating a community trust. But what you need to do apparently is also create a private trust in which you can do it on a piece of paper, and you place all of your assets and whatever is going to be in that on your private trust, and then you stick that private trust under an umbrella trust as well. So it gives you double protection from basically the commercial world. It means that anyone in the commercial world who wants to get a hold of your assets will have to do so through the Court of Chancery in equity rather than in commercial law. And of course, we all know that even in commercial law, which is ignored, the only thing you can actually do in commercial law is to attack the legal fiction, because the legal fiction exists in the commercial sector. And once you've actually said, yes, I'm Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, and you've admitted to it, you've basically given them rights to do whatever they want, because the whole of the commercial sector operates very, very strictly in laws, but the actual judgments are made in de facto. So whatever happens,
Yes.
whatever the judge wants to do on a particular day, he will do, and it holds. So what we are doing, basically, if you take yourself out of that completely into a trust, they have to make any challenges against you in the Court of Chancery, and you're operating in trust jurisdiction. Everyone, I'm handling cases at the moment for people who are facing notices of intended prosecution and things like that. We always attack the courts and the other side by getting them to prove jurisdiction.
Yes.
We'll always have, for instance, the last time I was Mackenzie, the clerk of the court was adamant that this woman was going to be prosecuted for not paying, not giving in details of a driver under criminal jurisdiction. We have to point out to them that criminal jurisdiction doesn't exist. Criminal or civil is a jurisdiction within one of three jurisdictions of law. It's either in trust law, it's in common law, or it's in commercial law. And we're just pinning them down and say, which one is it?
Yeah. Which one is it?
Because if it's going to be done as a criminal prosecution, then and it's going to be done against either the legal fiction or the living man or woman, then that person it's like a duel. I'm challenging you. Well, I choose the weapons. The weapon I choose is I want this to be heard in front of a jury under common law. You have the rights to do that, and it's all enshrined in the ECHR on Article 6. But they tried to say that it's going to be prosecuted under criminal jurisdiction, and one that intimidates you, but then carry it out in a commercial court. In other words, a bank.
Yes.
If you just challenge the jurisdiction, which is what we're doing. In fact, I had a message from one person today who I wrote a letter for challenging jurisdiction, and this is to do with the Yorkshire Police. And they've written back saying, we're thinking about it now, rather than we're going to prosecute you. So I think that's a prelude to them actually withdrawing.
Yeah.
from the case.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We can get a good result from that one.
You have to hold their feet to the fire.
Yes.
Yes.
And you have to make them answer the questions, because otherwise they'll divert you back onto their little standard flow chart and say, okay, we're going back in the flow chart, and we're in there again.
And of course, they've been doing this for so long that
Yeah.
when people like you come along and start challenging, it's like, oh, hang on a minute, I'm not used to this.
So,
Thank goodness.
I mean, if you can challenge them before you get to the court, I mean,
Yes.
this one we challenged through the court. So, and that's coming up on Thursday. So maybe I'll let you know how we get on.
Yeah, no, do. And I think your point there is very relevant, that people get very frightened that as soon as something comes in, that it's automatic that it's going to go to court, that they don't realise they've got the chance to rebut these things and to be, before it even goes anywhere near court, so that at the end they go, well, we don't want this in court because we now know he knows the system,
Yeah.
and we can't have it's just going to make us look idiots, so just squash it.
Well, that's the other thing that people are saying. Well, I'm getting all this stuff in these windowed envelopes and it's addressed to my legal fiction. I'm not going to open it. I'm going to send it back. Well, I say no. Open everything. You have to know exactly where you stand. If you're going to put any kind of defence together, you have to know. But people are just saying, oh well, all these bills are coming in. If I don't look at it, I can forget it. But you have to take your courage in your own hands and say, no, I'm going to open this and find out what it is.
I do. So that's an interesting point, because let me ask you this: I've had recently an envelope from a council. I don't know what it's about because I don't live in their area, in their county. But I keep getting this. It's the third time I've had it, and it's in a window envelope. But it's to me. But it's not. It's to me. But I say it's to me, but the spelling is incorrect. So I have been sending it back saying, please send it to the correct addressee. It's incorrectly addressed. So I've been sending that back because as far as I'm concerned, it's not for me. I don't know who that person is because it's not, What would you advise in that? Would you advise me to open it?
Well, yes, you can actually say you opened it in error because it looked like your name, but...
But in retrospect, it's actually, it's not for me because
it wasn't. Yes.
Yeah, it's a little old nonsense.
It's kind of one of the things that we're recommending people to do, and this is something we came up with about half a year ago, is that now that it's law that you can identify as whoever you want.
Oh yes,
it's wonderful. So we're saying we want our names prefixed if you're male with LM, or if you're female with LW, and that goes into the commercial sector. And you say, what does it stand for? Well, it stands for living man or living woman. If you're forcing the commercial sector to recognise that you're a living man or a living woman, it's going to cause so much hassle. It's going to be
oh gosh, yes, because you're not supposed to. They can't. The dead fiction can only deal with another dead fiction.
Yeah.
You can't deal with living people, living men and women.
Well, the other recommendation I give to everyone who's doing this is you have to see it as a game.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to make every effort to enjoy the process. It's a game.
Yes. Take the fear out of it.
Fall into fear, then you've already lost, because that's what they're relying on. But if you can actually use it as a game, and you're looking at it, I mean, I've done fencing, I've done judo and things like that. So I look at it as a combat sport, but this is a mental combat sport. But if you can enjoy the process.
Yes, a friend of mine, he does similar to what you're doing, and he always says to me, he says, I'm always over polite and ever so nice to these people. So he's like, oh, it's so lovely to hear from you. Thank you so much for all of this. Is it possible you could possibly, but the barb is in there, but he's been so kind and so, a bit over the top, but, because he's enjoying it so much.
I enjoy it, but I'm not polite.
Well, each their own, I guess.
Technique.
Absolutely. Where can people find out more about you guys and your trust and your common law group?
The best place, I think, will be, or the best introduction would be to go to our Facebook page, Hereford Common Law.
Right.
And you can hook onto there. There's a link that can link you to our Telegram page. We do most of our stuff on Telegram, and
Brilliant.
We're very active on there.
I'm not sure if I've got your Facebook link. I'll get you to quickly email it to me, but I'll put it in the description so people can find out that. And of course, if people want to set up, if there isn't a group in their area, and they, obviously the value that you bring together as a group, being able to share stories, have confidence, and bring in your summonses and say, oh, look what I've just got.
Yep.
Oh, well, all of that must be, which helps the game.
It does.
To presumably, and then people are going, oh yeah, I feel so much better now when you've told me this and that and the other. If people want to, can they get in touch with you? I mean, I don't want to flood you with emails because I know what it's like, but can people get in touch if they're saying, do you know what, we would love to set something up where we are?
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
We are expanding already because we were Herefordshire Common Law. We've already are in the process of changing our name to 6 counties, Herefordshire Counties Common Law Group, because we'd like to harass the other 5 counties around us as well. And we do have people who come down from Shropshire and people who come up from Wiltshire to our meetings.
Brilliant.
We have meetings every Tuesday evening. And it's most of them will go back with a more positive attitude, knowing.
I absolutely. I can't imagine that you wouldn't. From the hour we've spent together, it's you're just highlighting the uselessness of the councils, the fraudulent. Nobody. We're all told that we shouldn't. And banks won't lend us or even give us our own money because they're worried that we'll get scammed. True. And yet the government is scamming us and the council is scamming us left, right and centre and the banks are scamming us. Every of these corporations are scamming us, but they're pretending that, oh no, you mustn't get scammed. So I think once you just learn that that's what's happening,
Indeed.
And you've then got the confidence to say, do you know what, there's means and ways to deal with this.
Again, once you actually got rid of the fear, people are willing to challenge on their own. And then, I'm sort of guiding a lot of people through using Telegram through the process. But I do have this thing about template letters. And I think they're probably the worst thing possible, because at the end of the day, template letters mean that you don't have to learn it. You think there's a process.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
you have to understand. So I'm spend a huge amount of my time dealing with people who've gone partway through a process and then said, well, they put me back on the track. And you go, well, if you don't understand the process, then you're always going to be put back on the track. And so you then have to say, no, you need to be doing this or saying that, or holding them to answer this question rather than diverting you back into their system.
Yeah. So downloading just a few letters and sending them off and thinking that's it is really no way to go.
That way, yes. Yeah, the famous 3-letter process.
Yeah.
It does work. But you have to be able to fully, not even understand, you have to comprehend what you're doing.
Well, a lot of people just can't even get the fact that there's the difference between being a living man and a legal fiction, or that these are dead entities, and it's paperwork that will mainly do it. Yeah.
And the other important factor is language. If you analyze the language, you realize they tell you everything they're doing. A number of times I've described the word registration. And you look at the first 5 letters, which is Regis. Well, that's not the king, it's the Crown Corporation. You've got the T in the middle, which you isolate, and ration on the end. And because the whole thing is inverted, you put the ration on the front and the Regis on the end, and it means a lot to the Crown Corporation. You register anything, you are giving it away. And when you explain that to people, all of a sudden they think, oh, hang on.
And the biggest illustration of that, of course, is your car. And you know that when you get the V5 in and it says you're the registered keeper.
Everything, yeah.
Indeed.
And then people are going, hang on a second, wait a minute. And the penny drops rather loudly in their skull.
You've broken the law by admitting that you're the legal fiction, and then you've given everything away to the Crown Corporation, and they can sell it and trade it, which is what
absolutely, yeah. Listen, guys, I like to keep this to sort of about an hour, which is more or less where we are. This has been really, really interesting. It's reinforcing a message that I've been trying to point out. And I'm learning on the job, which is very difficult because I often make mistakes and then people come back and go, oh, Richard, you got that wrong. So it's so lovely to have people like yourself who are immersed in it, doing it and encouraging others. So thank you so much for coming on, telling us about how it works where you are. We will put the links on the description so other people can get in touch with you and ask the 1,000,001 questions. So you'll be snowed under with all of that. But it's all for the greater good because the system is so corrupt and so wrong, and that in time, as more and more people wake up and start to challenge and get rid of that fear, we can, of course, rebuild a better place for us and not have the worry of the WEF and the WHO and all the stupid institutions that they're trying to get. So I really, really appreciate you guys coming on the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks for giving us the publicity, because once the message gets out there, more and more people get a lot more confidence, and they will take things forward on their own. That's what we hope.
No, I absolutely, and as you said, it's been growing over the last year, and it can only exponentially get bigger and bigger.
And it will, yeah.
And the snowball effect, which must have them very, very rattled in the councils up and down the land as more and more people are challenging, going, hang on a minute, what's happened to people?
Yeah.
Which is great news. It's so good. And it's nice to have a little sense that we've got the power again.
Yes.
Oh, we've always,
and not that we ever hadn't had it. We just forgot.
We just
We just forgot. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Really,
Take care.
So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you got something out of that. I'm sure you have. I'll be back again with more monologues and, of course, the wonderful interviews with people like Herman and Amanda. But until next time, from us all, thanks for watching and goodbye.